Hi everyone! If you are new to my channel, welcome. If you are returning, welcome back. It is great that you can join us. In this math video lesson, we are going to learn how to subtract fractions that have unlike or different denominators. If you already know how to add fractions, then you're in luck, because subtracting fractions is just like adding fractions. The only difference is instead of adding, we're subtracting. The first thing we need to do before subtracting fractions is we need to look at the denominators, and we need to ask ourselves a question. Are the denominators the same? If the denominators are the same, then all you need to do is add your numerators. In this case, however, our denominators are different. We have 2/3, subtract 7/12. So we need to find the lowest common denominator. So the next question we can ask ourselves is, will the smaller denominator divide evenly with no remainders into the larger denominator? In this case, we would ask ourselves, will 3 go evenly into 12? And in this case, it will. 3 will go 4 times into 12. So what we need to do is rewrite our fractions so we have equivalent fractions that have denominators of 12. So we write equals, working down our page, and we have something over 12. So I'm just leaving the numerator blank for now and writing in the denominator, and again, writing in the denominator. Now for this fraction, 7/12, we can just write it as the same. So it remains 7/12 because we already have 12 as our denominator. What we then ask ourselves is, what did we multiply 3 by to get 12? Well, we multiply 3 by 4. So 3 multiplied by 4 is 12. Whatever we do to the denominator, we have to do the same thing to the numerator. That will keep this fraction equivalent. So if we multiply the denominator by 4, we must multiply the numerator by 4. 2 times 4 is equal to 8. Now that we have fractions where both the denominators are the same, so we have 12 for both the denominators, we can now subtract our fractions. Remember, when you're subtracting or adding fractions, the denominator always remains the same. So in this case, our denominator is going to still be 12. And then we subtract the numerators. So 8 subtract 7 is 1. And so our final answer for this question is 1/12. Let's look at a second question. This question I'll write in green. 7/5 subtract 2/3. So remember, the first thing we always have to ask ourselves is, are the denominators the same or are they different? So in this case, again, we have unlike denominators. We can then ask ourselves, well, will the lowest or the lower denominator, in this case 3, divide evenly into the larger denominator, 5? Well, 3 goes into 5, but we definitely have 2 remainder, so it doesn't go into 5 evenly. So in this case, we have to change or find an equivalent fraction for both 7/5 and 2/3 that have the same common denominator. What we need to do is list out our lowest common denominators. So LCD, lowest common denominator. Also, you might hear it referred to as lowest common multiple between 5 and 3. So what we need to list is all the multiples of 5 and all the multiples of 3. And what we're trying to find is the lowest number that both 5 and 3 divide into evenly. So if we count by 5s, we have 5, 10, 15, 20. And if we count by 3s, we have 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15. And there we go. So we can now see we have 3 going into 15 and 5 going into 15. Another option that works is you can always multiply your denominators to find a common denominator. So you could multiply 5 by 3, and in this case you would get 15, and that also happens to be your lowest common denominator or lowest common multiple. However, if you multiply your denominators, you're not always going to find the lowest common denominator or the lowest common multiple. Sometimes there are numbers that both your denominators will go into or divide into evenly that is not the multiple of those two or the product of those two numbers. So let's continue. We'll write our equal sign working down the page, and we can write our fractions with the denominator of 15. Again, I'm just leaving our numerator blank for now. Just going to grab a different color pen here, and we can go back to our original fractions. We must ask ourselves now, what did we multiply 5 by to get 15? Well, we multiplied 5 by 3, and that gets us 15. Whatever we do to the denominator, we must do the same thing to the numerator. And again, this keeps our fraction equivalent. So we're looking for an equivalent fraction to 7/5. So we multiply 7 by 3. Well, 7 times 3 is 21. So 21/15 is equivalent to 7/5. And we do the same thing for 2/3. So what do we multiply 3 by to get 15? Well, we multiply 3 by 5. So we have to do the same thing to the numerator, again, to keep our fraction over 15 equivalent. So 2 times 5 is 10. So we're now going to subtract 21 over 15 minus 10 over 15. So we'll finish now, continuing to work down the page. We never subtract the denominator, so the denominator remains 15. And then we can subtract 21, subtract 10. So 21 subtract 10 is 11. So our final answer is 11 over 15. In this case, since 11 is a prime number, there will be no number that divides into both 11 and 15 equally, so this fraction is already in its lowest form, so we can leave our answer there. For a third example, let's subtract 9 over 5 and 1/2. So we begin again by asking ourselves, do we have a common or uncommon denominator? Well, we have 9 over 5 and 1/2, so our denominators are different. So we will need to find a common denominator. Now again, there are a few ways we can do that. We can count by 5s and count by 2s until we get to a lowest common denominator, or we could multiply 5 by 2. In this case, if we multiply 5 by 2, we're going to get 10, and that happens to also be the lowest common denominator between 5 and 2. We know that 2 is not going to go into 5 evenly without a remainder. So we'll write our equal sign, and we'll rewrite the fractions with a denominator of 10. So leaving the numerator blank for now, something over 10, subtract something else over 10. So we ask ourselves, what do we multiply 5 by to get 10? Well, 5 times 2 is 10, so we must do the same thing to the numerator. So 9 times 2, and again, this will keep the fraction equivalent. 9 times 2 is 18. So 18 over 10 is equivalent or equal to 9 over 5. And we do the same thing, so we multiply 2 by 5 to get 10, and we do the same thing to 1. 1 times 5 is 5. You might have also looked at this and know that 5/10 is equivalent to a half. So you might not have had to go through this step where you show you're multiplying the denominator and the numerator by 5 to get your fraction here. And to finish this question, now that we have a common denominator, we can subtract our fractions. So we'll write our denominator here, so something over 10, and 18 subtract 5 is 13. So our fraction after subtracting is 13 over 10. Oh wow, that is an improper fraction. We know it's an improper fraction because the numerator is larger than the denominator. So we can take another step and write this fraction as a mixed fraction. So we ask ourselves, how many times does 10 go into 13? Well, 10 goes into 13 evenly once, and we have a remainder. The remainder is 3. So a remainder becomes our numerator, and the denominator stays the same. So we can finish this question by, again, writing it as a mixed fraction, 1 3/10. We'll finish up this lesson with one more example. So example number 4, let's subtract 5/6, subtract 1/4, or 1 over 4. So as always, we need to ask ourselves, do we have like or unlike denominators? Well, we have 5/6, subtract 1/4, so we can see our denominators are different. So we will need to find a common denominator. Now, we could multiply 4 by 6 and find a common denominator, but it won't be the lowest common denominator. What we'll do instead is find our lowest common denominator or lowest common multiple, so LCD or LCM, and we'll list some of our factors of 6 and some of our factors of 4 by counting by 6 and counting by 4. So we can count 6, 12, 18, and 24. We know that 6 multiplied by 4 is 24. And we can count by 4s, 4, 8, 12, and I can stop there because I see that I have 12 here and 12 here. So instead of using 24 as a common denominator, we can use 12, which will be the lowest common denominator between 6 and 4. So let's rewrite our fraction with the denominator 12. So something over 12, we'll leave our numerators blank for now, subtract something over 12. So now we ask ourselves, what did we have to multiply 6 by to get 12? Well, 6 multiplied by 2 is 12, so we have to multiply 5 by 2. That way our fractions are equivalent. 5 times 2 is 10, so 10 over 12 is equivalent to 5 over 6. And we ask ourselves, what do we multiply 4 by to get 12? Well, 4 multiplied by 3 is 12. So we multiply 1 by 3. 1 times 3 is 3, so 3/12 is the same as 1/4. Let's finish this question by subtracting our numerators. So we'll start by writing the fraction with the denominator of 12, because our denominators don't change. We never subtract denominators, and we can just subtract our numerators. So 10 subtract 3 is 7. So our fraction in its simplest form is 7/12. Now, if you haven't already done so, remember to hit that like button. It really helps me and my channel reach other learners just like you. If you want to improve your math skills, learn about new math tools and strategies, and feel more confident about math, then start now by subscribing and clicking on the bell icon so you don't miss any of my awesome videos. I'm Eric. Until next time, take good care and keep learning.